So, welcome. It's Thursday. We're almost at June. Quite frankly, I'm not upset with May passing on. It's not been an easy month, but that's besides the point. So, yesterday I went to a new printer to test some prints. Here you can see what I'm working with here. I have this commission that I'm doing of a rooster and also the other series of nudes that I've been working on. So I went to this new printer over in San Rafael, and it turned out that you needed an appointment to see them. So it was an impressive operation, although very small, boutique operation. And I was able to get some proofs done on a couple different types of paper. And there had been some questions about this idea of working with the press and what that's like, and what I'm looking for and things too. So the first thing is that right now many of my photos and now most of my paintings have been photographed so that I can sell them online as prints, as fine art prints. But the issue that I have is the press that I use in the United States for this particular size would charge me about $50 just to do the print. And this is the print, which the camera is not going to capture the detail of. And you can compare that online to the actual original painting, which is about 10 times bigger than this. But I want to be able to sell prints of the painting so that if you're in an apartment, you don't have a lot of space, you need something to fit your budget, that you would still be able to afford to do this. So this print would be available on rt.net through my gallery representation for $100. And I would pay $55 to the press to have it printed, which leaves me with $45. And then 40% of that would go to the gallery. And so the ideal here is that by bringing it inside of my studio, or at least closer to my studio, and removing the gallery from the process and finding a printer here in Mexico, that I would be able to have a higher profit, because that's really important. And also there's the cost of shipping as well. So now you've taken a $15 profit and probably taken it to like $10. So this week I've been doing research on shipping. So shipping something like this is about 700 pesos, about $35. Printing it was about 300 pesos, which is $15. So already my profit margin is at least quadrupled, about $50 on a $100 sale. So that helps out quite a bit. So this is a major revelation in terms of them. They do have a limit to the size they can get, like just about a poster size is as big as they're going to be able to get with this particular quality of paper. We could do some more experimenting with other papers in the future, but that will probably happen if an order comes in, because I can't afford to. This experimentation cost me 1,000 pesos, so that's about $50 to do all this stuff yesterday. And I had intended to videotape some of it with my phone, but it wasn't really an interesting process to watch at all. So most of the work is done in the computer beforehand. I brought them the file, and they don't do any adjustments. They just had printed this smaller proof. And as you can see today, what I've been doing is, I don't know if you could tell, I've been going in with a colored pencil and oil pastels to see how the paper interacts with my materials. It doesn't interact well with the oils. And I kind of figured that might be the case, because if you feel the paper in comparison to what I'm usually using, there's no real surface. It's not really absorbing. Everything sits up on top of it. So I'm going to be experimenting today with some of my chemical processes to see if that changes the surface enough that I can utilize this paper. I do like this paper, however. I did some experimentation, which you'll never be able to see in this quality of video, on the figure here with some colored pencil and oil pastels mixed, and the effect is actually quite nice. So I think this technique that I used in the previous piece that I was just restoring for my friend Martine, which reminds me I'm supposed to go pick it up from the framer, and I have yet to do that yet. It's been 90 degrees here in the city for almost over a week, which is extremely unusual. So things around here are moving very, very slowly. There's no HVAC or anything here. So that doesn't help. You can't go to a movie theater and sit in the cool movie theater to relieve yourself from the heat, because the movie theaters don't really have air conditioning. They barely circulate the air, so it can be quite stuffy and uncomfortable. Anyway, so moving forward, I had one of the photos, the double exposure nude. I had that printed as a sample yesterday just to see what the quality of this is, and I feel, and this is again not going to translate well with the quality of our video here. You can see it's quite blown out, but the image printed really well, and there's a lot of detail in it, and I'm quite happy with it. So I'm going to actually start offering some of these nudes as just prints, even before I get to go do the process and turn it into paintings like the one you see behind me up here. So I think that was it was a good experiment, and I feel very confident with that printer. I know how much that costs, and it's a lot easier for me to price work based on the costs. So like something like this nude print, I would be able to sell for $100 and still make a little bit of profit from it. So that's good news for me, and good for my clients, I think, my patrons and things too, because that means that you're going to have more opportunities to purchase my work at reasonable rates, whereas these gigantic pieces behind me are a little bit out of scope for most people. So, and I understand that, of course. So today I'm going to be doing some work on a commission, this rooster that I have been commissioned to do, and I think I'm going to, as part of my process, I will probably do one piece in oil pencil and then one piece in oil pastel, because I want to see the different qualities and start differentiating the techniques and the costs, and also the when I sell them, I can differentiate which technique somebody wants, and that will change the price as well. I'm also considering that when you, my workspace, my studio, which this is my living room that's been converted into my studio, and then my bedroom it's small. It has 2 love seats, a dresser, my television set, my matrimonial size bed, my closet, all that stuff is in the bedroom. And because when I finished working at the end of the day and my couch and my TV were in my studio, there was no transition mentally for me to a new space. So I didn't feel like I felt like I was continuing to work, and I would keep looking at the paintings and processing and stuff. So anyway, in that vein of things, I would like to have this scale, and I'll go get a board, and I'll be able to take the work to the board and cover it and take it to a cafe or something with a limited amount of supplies, or a park or something, just to get out of the studio on a regular basis and work. I've been doing most of my computer-based work now in cafes, just getting a tea and sitting there for 3 or 4 hours and processing files and making my social media posts, planning all those, and trying to do most of my business stuff outside of the studio, because it's a little overwhelming being in the same space all the time. And so we'll see. Some other opportunities have presented themselves, perhaps not at the best time. One of them was for there's a group that does soccer balls and big skulls and other objects down Reforma in different parts of the city. It's sort of like in Chicago, they have cows that are painted. I think somewhere in Vermont, I saw they were doing jaguars. So every city has their own little take on that thing. And here in Mexico, they do the same thing. So I was invited to participate in this project. But unfortunately, with my commissions, the timing doesn't work out well because there's really only 1 week to produce that soccer ball. And it's a new, they have material requirements and et cetera, and that's all new. And to try to place that on top of the commissions, especially when I'm getting over or still sick, I don't want to push myself that way. And there's no pay for it. There's potential. Each of the fragments of the soccer ball, they sell for 3,000 pesos, and the artist gets half of that. So 1,500 pesos, about $75. But materials and the time and basically taking over the studio for a week would be much more expensive. And it just doesn't make sense right now to try to put all that pressure on myself in order to meet a demand that hasn't proven that it would lead to something. Like the exposure would lead to more followers or sales or anything like that. There's no evidence of that. So I politely said, think of me for your next round, and depending on what my situation is at that time, then I'll examine it at that time. Of course, I also have been looking around for some part-time work, and so that's starting to yield some interest. So getting calls from recruiters. We'll see if I can get some part-time work to help support the studio as well. My lease is coming up at the end of July. I paid all the way through the end of July. I have another 6 months of money set back to maintain the studio / apartment. But of course, the cost of this apartment is significantly higher than what is reasonable for my budget, but it's also high for Mexico City, 9,000 pesos. And I have a meeting tomorrow. I'm very excited about this with a real estate developer. He rehabilitates historic buildings in this area, Condesa and Juarez, the El Centro area. And once they rehabilitate the space, the issue is it takes months and months for them to get all the paperwork in line to sell or rent the space out. And they don't want the spaces empty, so they're inviting artists to come and use the spaces as art studio space. Some of them are livable, some of them are not. So I will be meeting with this real estate agent tomorrow, taking photos, maybe some video, and I'll make sure I add those to the patreon.com/Chromatic Explorer, and show you, he's going to show me a couple of spaces. We're going to talk about what their process is and what to expect. Lots of noise from the streets as per usual, but no basura today. I have basura out the wazoo, and I never seem to be able to catch them. Anyway, so tomorrow is that meeting with that guy. I'll be working on the rooster commission, and I'm super excited about these prints. I'm actually going to, I think I'm going to oil pencil this one in as a test and save the other one that I have just as an example of the quality of the print that I got from this place. But things are looking much more positive, and there's opportunity abound. If you have been reading the posts that I've been making, I'm exploring what's going to happen at the end of July, because I want to take that little chunk of savings that I have and make the most out of it. So it could mean either renting a room at half the cost here in the city, about 5,000 pesos to rent a room somewhere, sharing an apartment, renting a room, and then having a separate studio, which this real estate development thing would really help out with, because that would not add costs to my overhead. Or it could mean moving outside the city to someplace like Puebla or Querétaro. I'm not really sure about Guanajuato. It's a mega small little city, and everything outside of the El Centro area is not nearly as charming and beautiful. It's more like living in the desert in California. that kind of climate and environment. And I haven't found that there's been as much advantage to being in the city as I had hoped. I thought more exposure, a wider market, so that might potentially stimulate some sales, more galleries. But as you know, I haven't had the greatest experience with the galleries here in terms of living up to what they say they want, or following through on the things that they say they want to do. All these things, everything is very fluid culturally. Words don't have as much meaning until something actually happens. So these larger pieces that I was producing for the gallery, for this gallery show that I don't, still to this date, over 4 months into being here, still do not have a date from them for, and cannot seem to get them into my studio in order to clarify the vision for the show and set the actual date. That just hasn't happened. So very, very disappointing. But at this point, I really have to keep moving forward, and I can't invest any more money in large scale pieces. I need to start thinking about what it is you're going to be able to afford and how you're going to be able to help support the studio as well. So, hey, this is the life. And we're just going to keep moving forward. So it's, can you read that? Is that, oh, it's backwards for you. It's still backwards. Okay. They should have printed it on one side forward and one side backwards, just in case, you know, somebody was video blogging and wanted to make a point. It says fuck it. So it's Fuck It Thursday, not Throwback Thursday. Yeah, so this is what I look, 22 pounds lighter than I was 3 weeks ago. And I just went to the doctor again, and he re-prescribed the exact same medication he prescribed to me 2 times before. Not a very detail-oriented medical professional. And I'm still trying to find a gastro doctor to work with. And I think probably maybe going to a different pharmacia and finding some tapeworm medicine, because that could be a potential as well. So we'll just keep doing what we're doing, and hopefully everything will come together. I look forward to eating one day, and I hope that this was an informative video for you. It's a little bit longer than I usually do, so thanks for your patience, and thanks for your patronage. Remember, Patreon, patreon.com/Chromatic Explorer. You can subscribe for $5 a month and get access to all the videos, process, and various things that I don't put out into the general public. So, and sometimes in Patreon, I post things as public, like this video will be posted as public. And sometimes I post them as private only for the patrons. After a long amount of time, for the benefit of my paying patrons, I will release those videos as public, since there'll be plenty of other private stuff in there. But I do also put like lots of photos and sketches and various different things in there. So it's a pretty rich environment, more like a full access into the studio, and of course, private conversations with my patrons. So thank you very much.